Well, obviously, the house is nearly 160 years old, 158, something like that. There's been a lot of life here. I mean, a lot of different people have lived here, and sometimes, and I think about it, not just the different people who lived and died here, but think about the different outfits that they would have wore, and the different ways they would have talked, and all the different times. I used to have a bunch of newspapers, to put this in perspective. They had stuff like an actual reproduction of like Custer's Last Stand, and a newspaper of the Titanic, and an old reproduction newspaper of Lincoln's assassination, and World War II. And this house has seen it all. It's seen everything. The last count that I know of, I think we've had about 14 people that I know of who died here. 14 people is a lot. But anytime a house is nearly 160 years old, it's gonna, and people have lived in it, then that's gonna be the case. People who believe in this kind of thing claim that when you go to remodeling the place, that there's a tendency to kick out the energy that may exist in the place, and that it's during those remodeling times that most paranormal things occur. Well, coincidence or no coincidence, because I can't tell you what I believe or don't believe. I can just tell you the things that we heard or saw or whatever. But nearly everything that we heard or saw happened in those first 2 years when most of the work was going on. The house, is quite large and kind of intimidating, especially if you're in here all by yourself, I guess. Especially before we did anything to it, when it was kind of in the raw, so to speak. But the first thing that I ever saw or heard was I was in the rear parlor, which was over there. And it was late at night, and I was painting the walls, my living cloth. In those days, we'd work 16-hour days between working our jobs and coming home and working on this house till near midnight, and then going to bed and getting up and doing it all over again. And while I was painting, I heard a woman say my name, and it was a woman whose voice I had never heard before. It sounded so real to me that the hair stood straight up in my arms, and I stopped dead cold on that ladder. And I can remember thinking to myself, either I am so tired that I'm hearing things because the radio was playing, or I really have heard something. Either way, it was time to quit and go to bed. Well, in just a short time period from there, maybe a week or 2 weeks, I had a friend of mine, and I was sitting on the steps right here, and I needed something, and I asked her if she would go into the rear parlor to get something off my desk, and she went. And she started screaming and ran out of that rear parlor and said something had grabbed her on the arm. And she just truly was as sincere as she could be. I don't know, I just tell you what I saw her do. Within about a week after that, I had some interior decorators here in the house give me some ideas, and they were coming down that staircase right there, out by the same rear parlor, and one of them started hollering that there was something in her hair. Somewhere during those first 2 years, probably during the first year, we started off staying like in one room. We would redo one room and then go to another room, where my mother was sleeping on the floors in the dining room, And in the middle of the night, somebody came around there, and she looked up, and it looked like a child. And as she first thought it was her mother, my grandmother. But as she looked, it was like a child in an old type, like a sleeping gown, like kids used to wear. And that the child just kind of backed up out of the doorway. And my mom said she was wide awake, she wasn't asleep, and that she really thought that's what she saw. My grandmother, one time, started talking to these two girls, and she started having this conversation with people who were not in the room. That was really strange. But in those early days, probably to me, the best thing I ever encountered here was the one that I had no explanation for. I mean, these other things I've described, I can't define them. I just know their explanations. You know, I'm tired, I'm painting, I'm tired. A bug lands on my friend's arm, a bug lands on the interior decorator's head. My grandmother's old, my mama is asleep. She thinks she's not, but she's asleep. But and this is one of the last things, maybe the last real thing I ever heard or saw here. I was in that rear parlor. It was in the middle of a summer day, about 12 noon. And I was doing some work at my desk. And my dad was here with me, and he was laying on the couch asleep. We had no animals in, no dogs, no cats. And no TV was playing, no radio was playing. It was quiet. My mother had taken my grandmother to the store. So the house was as still and quiet as it could be. 12 o'clock noon, your biorhythms are really high, so everybody's wide awake. And all of a sudden, I heard steps. Sound like boots on hardwood floors. I listened to it, and I listened to it, and it got louder and louder. And after a while, getting louder, about a minute or two, I finally said, somebody's in this house. So I stood up from my desk and walked out into this hall. And the minute I got in this hall, the noise went away. Well, still thinking there may still be somebody in the house, I searched the entire house. Upstairs, downstairs, both downstairs wings. And there was no one in this house. And I have no explanation for it. It was a really strange thing. I have no idea. Since then, my brother moved into here for a brief time, about 3 or 4 years ago. And he was going to work one day, and he turned around at his car and said he saw somebody looking at him out one of the curtains upstairs. And when he saw him, he said they kind of just looked and then just kind of pulled their head back away from the window. Kevin's a pretty practical guy. He told my mother the story. He told my mother that he actually didn't tell nobody for about 3 weeks. He was embarrassed to say it, embarrassed to talk about it. That kind of goes along with the thing that when you first come to places like this, that you're more sensitive to the energy. When you're here a while, you're no longer sensitive to it. And it just don't reach you, I don't know. We had a lot of tragedy here the last year. My dad died a year ago, last June, in a hospital from blood clots. And my mother was walking the dogs out front, right out this door here, not 15 feet. And the dogs took off after a cat, and it jerked her down and it killed her, broke her neck. But one of the things that always struck me was just a few days earlier, Mama told me that she had seen a light coming from the eaves as though it was a secret room. And I hate it because I wasn't listening to her as closely as I should have been. Mama liked to talk, and lots of times I always have things in my mind, mostly practical matters, work and bills and doctor visits and all these kind of things. I remember hearing it, but I didn't inquire any deeper. But that thought's always come back to me, because she told me that just a few days before her accident, that she was walking the dogs and she saw a light coming from somewhere up in the eaves. She's trying to explain it to me, and it looked like a secret room. Well, since Mom has been dead, I'm here a lot, and a lot of times by myself with my dogs. And I get to where I like the silence. I don't turn on TVs, radios, or nothing. And it seems like I haven't seen anything. I can tell you I've seen this, heard this, but it seems like I'm often, all the time, seeing little things. My head jerking around in here. It's like, well, did I see something? And then I just say, no, it's just your imagination. It's like little flashes of things. And yet nothing that I can tell you has any distinctive form that I can tell you what it was. But that's been going on a little while. I had a false scare the other day. I was in the bathroom and I heard somebody walk around the gravels at 6 in the morning. And I thought, oh my God, listen to that. As it turned out, I heard it again a few days later, and it was the shade in the bathroom rattling with the wind. But it sure sounded like footsteps. But some of the old stories that came down to us before we ever got here, the father of a friend of mine grew up here in Meadowview. Said they used to play in this yard, and said one night a riderless horse came over the hill, and because there used to be, even back then there was more land here than there is now, and that they took off running, and when they reached toward the top of this land up here, up this yard up here, that the horse just went away. He told me that story personally. There are stories of rockers rocking upstairs with nobody in them. This came from Miss Magnuson, who sold me the house. Stories of them finding baby bones in the attic. So, there are all kinds of stories and stuff here. I can't tell you that any of it means anything. My mother has a poem upstairs. I really like the poem. I found it actually, I'm going to put it back up. It said, all old houses are haunted houses. And it goes on to talk about how that they all hold the lives, the memories, and the energy of the people who have graced upon their floors and opened their doors. But it's not meant to be a haunting thing. It actually goes on to say that these spirits that are in these haunted houses, so to speak, actually embrace their old estates, and that they are very happy when people take care of them, and that they basically stand embracing them and guarding them for eternity. And the basic theme of the poem is there's nothing to fear from them. That they actually are very pleased and that they embrace them from beyond, and that they're pleased when people take care of them. But it's a great poem. And that's the way I look at it. I don't think if there is any energy here that's negative energy. Life's hard, and people have lived here and had good times, bad times. That includes my own family, obviously. But I like to think that I've cared enough about the house to try to take care of it. And I try to perpetuate its history. I try to talk about all the owners who lived here, what I know about them. By the way, some of the Edmondson children who grew up there are pictured on the wall up there. If you want to put a camera on. And I just believe that if there's any spiritual energy here, that they'll be pleased with the fact that my family did so much in trying to take care of their home, and that they have nothing to fear, that they're actually, embracing you, and they're very thankful for you. And so, I'm not really afraid of anything here. So that's pretty much all the stories. All houses wherein men have lived and died are haunted houses. Through the open doors the harmless phantoms on their errands glide, with feet that make no sound upon the floor. We meet them at the doorway, on the stair, along the passages they come and go, impalpable impressions on the air, a sense of something moving to and fro. There are more guests at the table than the host invites. The illuminated hall is thronged with quiet, inoffensive ghosts, as silent pictures on the wall. The stranger at my fireside cannot see the forms I see, nor hear the sounds I hear. He but perceives what is, while unto me all that has been is visible and clear. We have no title or no deeds to houses or lands. Owners and occupants of earlier dates from graves stretch out their dusty hands and hold in mortem their old estates.